Jack, just a bit of background. Jack retired from politics. He was a member of the South Australian Parliament. He retired from politics in March 2018 after 20 years and 8 years as a cabinet minister. Jack had a reputation for leading complex reform and as an advocate for these reforms with the South Australian public. He was a treasurer. He's held a number of portfolios, defence industries, health industries, the arts, employment, training and further education, science, road safety and workers' rehabilitation. So quite a distinguished political career as a relatively young man. And it's been a privilege for me to work with he and Tom and Deepa, who's here today, who you'll meet shortly, and Chris Baker, who is an apology. But these guys make up our federal executive and provide the governance for the party. And it's been a joy to work with them and to work with people with such great political acumen. The board recently asked Jack to be the chair of our federal campaign committee. So we've already started working on our federal campaign, and Jack's going to speak a little bit to us about our campaign strategy and where we're heading as we head into the next federal election. So would you please welcome Jack Snelling.
Thank you very much, Lyle. Lovely to be here, and my apologies for not being there in person. I had greatly hoped. Unfortunately, 3 weeks ago, I injured myself on a bike, and it wasn't doing anything particularly glamorous. I wasn't tearing downhill at 80 kilometres an hour or anything like that. My leg just simply, foot slipped off the pedal, and the pedal caught my calf, and I required a number of stitches, and unfortunately the wound's taken longer to heal than I'd hoped, and my doctor has said that I wasn't able to travel. So my apologies. I really was looking forward, and my wife as well was going to join me. We were very much looking forward to hearing the magnificent lineup of speakers today. So I'm very envious, but do of course get to watch it, watch the recording. So we'll certainly be doing that. For those of you who don't know me, I was involved in South Australian state politics for about 20 years. For almost half of that, I was a cabinet minister in the South Australian state government, serving as both treasurer and minister for health for that time. I retired from politics in 2018, and it was my desire not to re-enter politics in any form. I really was looking, hoping that God had other plans for me in my life. But I found myself in about 2022, 2023, really feeling a call to re-enter the political fray in some capacity. And the main reason for that was the passage of a couple of pieces of legislation in the South Australian State Parliament under the then Liberal government. The first was euthanasia, which we had been resisting in the State Parliament for decades, but unfortunately ended up passing through the State Parliament, and we now unfortunately have a euthanasia regime in South Australia with all its attendant risks. And then probably most disturbing was the passage of legislation for abortion to birth. So South Australia had gone through abortion law reform in the late 1960s, but this passage of legislation opened that up to essentially a full abortion on demand regime right up until birth. And that legislation was championed by people on both sides of politics. And really what I saw had emerged, at least in the early 2000s, and we always thought that it was a great loss when Family First folded and folded into the Conservative Party. So, and then the Conservative Party had fallen over. So there was at least in South Australia, there was no Conservative option for people at the last state election, and I was very keen to try and ensure give people a choice, a political choice. So together with my former colleague Tom Kenyon and our new friend Deepa Matthew, new at that stage, feels like we've known her forever, and Chris Baker, we re-established Family First, and really only getting the political party, the Family First Mark II, as Lyle calls it, really got it going. It was the registration only came through in January for the March state election. So we just got the registration really in the nick of time, and we're able to contest that election. In that state election, South Australian state election in 22, Tom Kenyon ran as our lead legislative council candidate and Deepa as number 2 on the ticket. And we went from Family First having had no presence for a number of years in the South Australian political scene to Family First achieving the 4th highest statewide vote of all the political parties behind Labor, Liberal and the Greens. And we were the last, Tom was the last candidate to be eliminated from the Legislative Council vote. So we did come extraordinarily close to getting Tom elected, and we were very unfortunate it wasn't to be. But nonetheless, we'd laid the foundations, I think, for Family First, and what Lyle, since coming on board as National Director of Family First, has been able to achieve in the last couple of years. I just want to talk to you today really about the upcoming federal campaign and my thinking, and a little bit about how Family First needs to position itself and how we should be thinking about our long-term strategy. Now, I've run election campaigns for the Labor Party since I was 17 years old. So for a good 30 years, I ran campaigns for local government, I ran campaigns in state seats, and I ran campaigns in federal seats. So really across the board, it's a bit in my blood. But I have a bit of a theory about political success. And if any of you follow football, and by football I mean soccer, you'll know that there's a stark contrast in tactics and style of different teams, and nowhere is this more so than the difference in style between the Brazilian national football team and the German national football team. Now, Brazil, sorry, relies heavily on star players. They have stars like Pele, who just wow everyone. They have incredible skills, and they rely as a team on a few key individuals. They rely on those stars to make them successful. They also have an amazing technical skills, amazing flair, amazing creativity with the ball. They're just a sight to behold. They're amazing to watch, and people love going to watch the Brazilian team play. In stark contrast, the German football team have none of the flair. They rely heavily on teamwork and discipline, and they're just relentless the way they approach a football game. And their aim is to wear their opponents down. And just through solid teamwork, not relying on any individual players, but relying on their cohesiveness of a team, is the key to success of the German national football team. And so in politics, I'm very much drawn to that German approach. A strong emphasis on teamwork. We're not expecting incredible stars to come out and win the day for us. Discipline and cohesiveness as a political unit, I think, are what in the long run will be the key ingredients to success of Family First. If you look at, I guess, our competitors in the people, political parties, minor political parties who would consider themselves our competitors, they're very much dependent upon key individuals, whether that be Pauline Hanson or Clive Palmer. They're those key individuals, those who the party is centred on, rather than a mission or a worldview which provides that cohesiveness. And so when those key individuals depart from the scene, I expect that those political parties will quickly fall apart. It's important that Family First is built on a common vision with a strong emphasis on policy cohesiveness and teamwork, which I think will see us through in the long run. Now, I'm also in politics a great one for studying the enemy and learning from them. And I think as a political party, a minor political party, starting basically, unfortunately, from scratch, we really should look to the Greens as to give us some ideas about the way to work, the way to find those ingredients to political success. And the Greens have only been a big players on the national political scene relatively recently, but it's important to remember that they didn't come from nowhere. In 1982, the Australian Greens had one elected representative in Australia, and that was Bob Brown, who was a state MP in the Tasmanian Parliament. Today, they have MPs, I think, in every single political parliament, in every parliament, state parliament, in the federal parliament, including the lower house. They have elected representatives in local government. They have held the balance of power. And as we head into the next federal election, it would seem almost certain that they will be part of some power sharing arrangement, that they almost certainly will have the balance of power in the next federal parliament. And that has taken time for them to get to that point of view. So 1982, one MP from all of Australia, 2024, balance of power and exercising an incredible amount of influence. So there's a lot we can learn. I think the first is that we shouldn't expect overnight success. Politics is really a game for marathon runners. Sorry to mix the sporting analogies, mix the sporting metaphors. I'm going from soccer to athletics, but it really is a game for those who are prepared, who are able to run the long distance. It's not really a game for sprinters. And while it's true that politics in Australia at the moment and around the world, indeed, is very, very fluid at the moment, the Family First project is going to take many years, perhaps decades. Now, the Greens have had an insidious effect on the major parties, but particularly Labor. And I think many of the current Albanese government's worst policies are largely driven by the threat of the Greens in the inner city electorates that were once safe Labor, that Labor is trying to hold. And I think a lot of the reason for the policy crisis within federal Labor and their adopting of policies that are so harmful to the very people the Labor Party was formed to represent is because of the Greens and because the federal Labor, or the Labor Party, I guess, is trying to straddle two electorates with very different interests: an affluent inner urban electorate who embrace, or a large proportion of embrace, the more radical ideologies that we've seen, that you would have heard about today, and I guess a suburban, more working class, working middle class electorate who are more interested in the bread and butter issues and who want to be able to send their kids to school without them being indoctrinated with gender ideology. They want their girls to be able to play in women's sport without men entering or having to compete against men. They don't want their children indoctrinated, and they want to have a reasonable cost of living without having to pay the massive power bills that are being driven by green ideology. It's interesting how the Greens' effect has also been to, I think, drag the entire political debate to the left, and things that perhaps once would have been seen as very left-wing and quite radical, things like being able to change your sex on your birth certificate just by decision, are now considered to be quite mainstream. So the Greens have in fact dragged the entire political climate, the entire political debate to the left. And so it's important that we counter, as Family First, counter this really corrosive effect on the political culture in our country. So, who are our key voters? Who are part of the electorate who we think that there's the best chance of shifting away from the major political parties or the other minor political parties and shifting their vote to Family First? My friend Dave Hutt has done some analysis on some of the voting patterns that particularly in the South Australian, the Victorian state elections, to see which were the electorates and what were the factors in those electorates which led to the highest Family First vote. We picked on those states because they're the most recent, and they're the two most recent state elections where Family First is contested, where we've been on the ticket. Interestingly, our highest vote was not necessarily in the most Christian electorates, which I would have expected. I always presumed that Family First had a large pull from church attendees, people who identified as Christians, sent their children to Christian schools, attended Christian churches, but not necessarily the case. If anything, there was for some funny reason, a slight negative correlation. Where the positive correlation was with families with children. So those electorates that had the highest proportion of mum and dad and young kids. And when you think about it, the brand Family First, if you're a family, young kids, cost of living, under all of the pressures that families are currently have to contend with, a political party with the brand Family First is incredibly appealing and resonates with those families. So as we head into the federal election, we have to keep in mind that the people who are most likely to vote for us are those young families, mum, dad, families with young kids. They're really the electorate which provides the most opportunity for us as a political party. And I think that's probably even more so coming into the next federal elections, where I think families have just been completely neglected by both the main political parties. People are hurting and they're frustrated and they feel disenfranchised, particularly young families with a mortgage. You have high interest rates, and make no mistake, these high interest rates are being entirely driven by the fiscal policies of the federal government. Cost of living, which is being driven by high energy prices. Energy touches every part of the economy, energy prices and the cost of energy. So everything in your shopping basket has, in terms of the cost makeup, energy has gone into it. So when you increase the cost of energy, which this government has done as a deliberate policy, you're going to drive up the costs of everything. So high interest rates, soaring power prices, an ongoing campaign, and despite the most recent truce, this is not going to go away, but there is a campaign to destroy faith-based schools and to insert gender ideology into those schools. And I think this provides an opportunity for us in those electorates, particularly those electorates with families with kids who are going to be looking for, or, who the major parties have let down, and who are going to be looking for um, an alternative. So we have to position family first to give us every opportunity to pick up those votes. So how do we do that? How do we make that happen? Well, I think when we go into the next federal election, we have to be clear on our objectives. What are we trying to do here? In the Victorian and South Australian state campaigns, we achieved 3 to 4% of the vote, which was fantastic, given both we were coming from nowhere. We hadn't had a presence in either state for a very long time. And so I was very pleased with that, getting that 3 to 4%. And I think the coming federal election, if we match that or improved upon that in our Senate voting in the 3 states where we're running, I think that'd be very good. Why are we running? Well, we're running really to lay those foundations for future success. As I said earlier, politics is a marathon, it's not a sprint. It's going to take a number of election cycles for us to slowly build our vote as we create brand awareness of Family First, as we present ourselves as a credible alternative to those families who are looking for a choice, looking for an alternative to the major parties. So we need to create what I'd call brand awareness, awareness of the Family First brand as a genuine alternative. So our campaign is going to have a strong focus on the Family First brand. We really want to be saying, getting the name Family First in front of as many voters as we possibly can over the next 6 months. So there won't be much of as great as our candidates are, when it's not going to be a presidential type election that you would see the Labor or Liberal parties running, where they try and downplay the party brand and concentrate on the candidate, the leader. Our objective here will be very much to focus on the brand Family First and to try and get that branding in front of as many people as we possibly can. Our themes, which we've given some thought to, and we've still got a bit of work to do, but we think there are 3 themes that we should be running on and that will feature prominently in the campaign. The first is cost of living, which I think is a real opportunity for us. Now, it's true, everyone's going to be talking about cost of living. The Labor Party, the Liberal Party, everyone's going to be talking about how they're going to reduce cost of living. But the single main reason for the increase in cost of living in Australia, neither of the major parties is prepared to do anything about, because it really comes down to the sort of subsidies and distortion of our electricity market, which is jacking up energy costs and hurting ordinary families and enriching multimillionaires who have investments in these so-called renewable energy entities. So I really wanted us to focus on how the government subsidies for renewables are really distorting the energy market, the electricity market, and jacking up power prices and having a ripple effect right through the economy. Now, it's true, the Liberal Party are proposing nuclear energy, but nuclear energy, and I'm a great fan of nuclear energy, but it's a good 10 to 15 years off at least. It's not going to solve the energy crisis, the increase in electricity prices anytime soon. And it really, someone needs to articulate the effect that these subsidies are having on ordinary families, enriching a few individuals at the expense of ordinary working Australian families. So cost of living and differentiating ourselves from the other political parties is a way of dealing with cost of living. Protecting faith-based schools is our second theme, and there is, without doubt, an organised effort to destroy faith-based schools in this country, and the way they want to achieve that is by removing the exemptions which allow faith-based schools to employ people who share the mission of the school, the faith-based mission of the school. And this is a massive threat to the growing Christian schools movement, the growing classical schools movement in this country. I'm the chairman of a new classical primary school, faith-based school in South Australia. And if the amendments are made to the Equal Opportunities Act, which would prevent us from giving preferential employment to people who share our faith and share the mission of the school, that will be the end of the school. We won't be able to otherwise operate, and there'll be I think the ideologues are concerned about the popularity, particularly of the independent Christian schools around Australia, that people who don't even share or practice this Christian faith are keen to have the values of Christianity instilled in their children, and they see Christian schools as a vehicle to help them do that. And the ideologues don't want that. They want to stop that from happening. And so these moves to remove the exemptions that exist for faith-based organisations are really about removing what they consider to be the threat of faith-based schools. So we need to have a strong campaign to support faith-based schools. And the third plank, I think, of our policies is really about opposing noxious gender ideology. I think it's interesting to hear people who, many issues that would not share our faith or our values, but feminists who see the threat from hard-won women's rights from gender ideology. And we've seen the spectacle in the Olympics of a biological man competing in boxing and winning gold medals against women. I think the average person is pretty outraged by that, and see anyone with daughters sees that this gender ideology, what a threat it is to women and everywhere. And it's not only that issue, but also the issue of it being all pervasive or in schools, and the attempts to, in what I would call, really brainwash children on this issue, and to take away the sense that there are boys and girls and men and women, and there are differences between them, and you can't just seamlessly shift between one or the other. It's quite an insidious and dangerous ideology. And I think as well, the way that I think a lot of it is about taking away parental rights, and children having these sorts of treatments without any parental involvement is extremely concerning, and I think is another issue where ordinary people are going to line up on what they would consider to be just common sense. So we still have a lot of work to do. We have to work these themes up, and we have to make sure that we present them in a way that will resonate with mum and dad voters. I just, while I'm talking, so on that theme, I'm harking again, as people think I'm sort of obsessed with the Greens, so my apologies, but I did want to share with you some ads that have been some ads done by the Greens, and once I can go back to the beginning, just to give you a bit of a sense about the way the Greens present themselves, and a bit of a potential template for how we should present ourselves, obviously with very different themes. But I'll play some ads.
Your vote is powerful. Vote 1 Greens.
Make housing affordable. Vote 1 Greens.
Integrity in government. Vote 1 Greens.
No new coal and gas. Vote 1 Greens. Coal and gas are fueling the climate crisis, but Labor is fast-tracking more gas near the 12 apostles.
We don't need more coal and gas. We need more Greens to replace coal and gas with cheaper, cleaner power.
Vote 1 Greens.
We're in a housing crisis.
But Labor acts as affordable housing plans, caving to property developers,
We need more Greens to make housing affordable.
and end special treatment for property developers.
Vote 1 Green.
Well, I hope everyone's still there and they haven't rushed off and think I've gone mad. But I think these ads are interesting. They are designed to appeal to middle of the road type voters. These aren't ads that are designed to appeal to the green base voters. They're pretty heavy on platitudes. Not a huge amount of detail. They're essentially aimed at people who are disillusioned with the major parties and because of some key issues which the major parties don't have answers to and are looking for somewhere to park their vote. Interestingly, a strong focus on the Green brand. So you don't see Adam Bandt or any of the Greens candidates. So they're not Greens candidates who feature in those ads. They are meant to be ordinary people. And the ads are short and are able to be used across multiple platforms. So the plan, the immediate plan for the Family First campaign is to try and get ads made for Family First, focusing on our themes, and they make these ads short and able to be used across multiple platforms, so both social media, digital TV, radio, and I'm very keen to get these ads up and running before the end of the year. Next year, once the election campaign is on, we'd be competing against the major political parties to buy screen time on the media platforms. So I'd really keen to get these ads up and running before the end of the year. We need to raise about $30,000 to be able to get these ads produced, and then more on top of that to purchase the time on the media platforms to actually run them. So I guess that's my most as the campaign director, my most immediate priority. In terms of what you can do, the priorities are to identify candidates in lower house seats, particularly in those. We have our 3 Senate candidates. Those Senate candidates rely heavily upon the lower house, the House of Representatives candidates to support the Senate campaign. Lyle and Bernie in New South Wales and Victoria are not going to be able to be everywhere. They're not going to be able to have that presence in every electorate. They're not going to be able to organise every polling booth. So to have candidates in lower house seats is absolutely critical, particularly in those electorates where there are young families. So those electorates where Family First has the most opportunity to harvest votes, where there are young families who are hurting because of cost of living and because of high interest rates. The second thing is we need volunteers, particularly to hand out how to vote cards. People increasingly don't make up their mind about which way they're going to vote until they physically enter the polling booth. So a large proportion of people, if those people have something in their hands, a Family First how to vote in their hands, we've got a good chance of picking up their vote. So that polling booth presence is critical. We want to get the Family First brand in front of as many people as possible. And that will give us the best opportunity to get elected or get someone elected, get one of our Senate candidates up. But failing that, it will lay the foundations for our future campaigns. So as I said at the start, there's a very large mountain to climb. The major party vote, particularly the Labor Party vote, is in freefall, but they still have, through incumbency, a massive advantage. So this might well be, like the Greens, a 40-year project. I hope not, but we have a great brand, but I guess most importantly, what we have is you there at the conference today. Thank you for making the effort to come and support Family First at this conference. It's great that you're here, that you're showing your support, that you're hearing our guest speakers, that you're going away energized. It's really, political parties are built upon their supporters, the people who are prepared to talk to their neighbours, to talk to their friends about Family First, to organise volunteers, to hand out how to vote cards, to letterbox electorates. That is what makes a political party successful. So thank you for your presence here today. Thank you for your time in being here, and onwards and upwards. Thank you so much for having me.
Jack, thank you so much. I don't know whether you can still hear us. Not if there's signs of life.
I just heard you, Lyle.
Terrific. Yeah, thank you.
Otherwise, I could hear the crickets. I wasn't sure.
There was loud clapping and applause, Jack.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
You're just
seriously.
making that up.
No, I'm not. No. Let's give it up for Jack. Well, thank you, Jack. I hope that's given you a bit of an understanding of what's in our thinking in terms of how we campaign. We're setting some fairly realistic expectations, not trying to be unrealistic. We want to be the Germans, not the Brazilians. I think that's the key take-home lesson from that. And you'll see in your conference packs, we've given you some of the campaign literature that we've produced. This is just an early form, and you can see from Jack's talk some of the thinking that's gone behind it. We don't have a lot of money to do proper research and polling to really work up this messaging. But I think you've got a sense from today between the likes of Tom, and you're about to hear from Deepa as well. Just heard from Jack. And we've got support from people like David, who was mentioned earlier, who have had a lot of political experience. And we've worked up this messaging regime, cost of living, support independent schools, protect women and children from gender ideology. So this is on the flyer that is going to the ACT. Ray, I've got 10,000 of these in my car. We need to have a rendezvous in the car park after this. But this is to help with the ACT election, and similar messaging that we're taking into the federal campaign, as Jack has said. So that's a bit of an insight. We're going to continue on with our theme this afternoon, and we can say farewell to you, Jack, I think. Thank you so much. Technicians can pull the plug.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks heaps, Jack. God bless you.